Hello, everyone. I'm Sydney Shepard, editor of Occupational Health and Safety magazine. Welcome to this live one-hour webinar titled Making It Work, How to Build a Robust Safety Training Program Globally. Our webinar today is sponsored by Skillsoft. Our speaker for today's webinar is Lynn Ross, Senior Director of Global Operations Training and Development at Equinix. Lynn came to the Equinix team after spending 5 years establishing the Operations Academy at Johnson Controls across 200-plus manufacturing sites. Prior to Johnson Controls, she spent more than 33 years at General Electric and GE Healthcare in increasing levels of responsibility in training organizations. Also joining us today is Norman Ford, the Vice President of Skillsoft. Norman previously served as the Vice President of e-learning products and services for GoTrain, where he was also a co-founder. Before joining GoTrain, Norman was responsible for developing training requirements and procedures for Lockheed Martin Energy Systems and providing corporate subject matter expertise in nuclear and HSE regulations. Before we get started today, I do want to address a few housekeeping items. At the end of the presentation, there will be a Q&A session where I will ask Lynn and Norman a few questions from you. If you'd like to submit a question, you are more than welcome to use the Ask a Question console on your screen at any point during the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties during the presentation, click on the Help button located below the slide window and you will receive technical assistance. And finally, after this virtual event today, a link to an archived version of the webinar will be emailed to you so that you can view it again or share it with a colleague. I want to give one more special thank you to Skillsoft for their support of this webinar and to Lynn and Norman for presenting our audience with this very important information. And now I'll turn things over to you, Norman.
Thanks, Sid. You know, back in the day, safety training was once part of a mandatory checklist to keep employees in compliance. But now, training programs have taken a key role in creating a safe working environment where every employee performs to the best of their ability. Well-designed and executed health and safety programs transform the way employees approach their work and have the potential to transform an organization's culture. I'm Norm Ford, VP of Skillsoft Global Compliance Solutions, and I'm here today with Lynn Ross, Senior Director of Global Operations Training and Development at Equinix. We're going to talk about building robust safety training programs that make a difference. I'm excited to be here with Lynn. She has such an impressive track record in developing effective training programs. She built the Learning and Strategy program at GE Healthcare from the ground up and spent more than 40 years driving efficiencies in quality and compliance. Most recently, Lynn was with Johnson Controls, where she created the Johnson Controls Operations Academy to support operations excellence regionally. Today, Lynn plays a critical and influential role in standing up a new global training organization for Equinix. She is working on developing a global operations training roadmap that creates a competent and empowered operations organization. Lynn, we're so excited to sit down with you today. Can you tell us some of the challenges you faced in building global training programs?
Wow, I don't even know where to start with that, Norm, but I sure can. You know, as I listened to you and I kind of went a trip down memory lane there myself, I think the number one challenge, though there's many, is getting the audience right. There's a lot of times back in the day where we would take training and just say, you know what, here's my big training program, and we're going to throw it out and just spread it across everyone. You heard a little bit about my background of manufacturing employees or technical engineers, right? These are people that probably aren't sitting in front of a computer like all of us are now, right? They're doing hands-on work, they're doing customer work, or they're working in the field. And some of that training wasn't specific to them. So I think the number one challenge is getting that audience right. Understanding what is that audience, what do they do, and then not just broad brushing that audience and assuming you know that a tech is a tech is a tech or an engineer is an engineer, especially when it comes to safety. There's cultural differences, there's local laws, there's local works councils. We talk a lot in Ameris, right, with OSHA. You know, OSHA plays a big part of us. But just because we create safety programs here in Ameris, it doesn't fit the Korean worker or the guy or gal in a manufacturing plant in Germany. So that assumption that has been made over the year, I think, is still our number one challenge. When I explain what I do for a living to friends or family, we just take some content and we marry it up with some people and we merge the two together. That's all. Sounds easy, right? Well, think about the layers of that content. And are you creating awareness around that content? Are you creating knowledge around that content? Are you building skills within that content? And skills means that that person's paycheck resides on having that skill. And then think about the person. Is the person, somebody that is an executive? Maybe they're the ones that need to be aware. Is that person a manager of a group of people and they need to have that knowledge? And then maybe it's a technical person on the floor that they really need to have that skill. So there's all sorts of cross matrices, if you think about it. That's the challenge. So that already has probably started some gears rolling in a lot of the audience personnel. That's the challenge, is really understanding what is your audience, who are they, what do they do for a living, and then what is the topic that you're trying to teach them, right? Are you teaching them a skill, or are you teaching them to be aware that the floor is going to be slippery or there's a construction site going on? I think it sounds so basic words, but I think you all understand that impact of that.
So it sounds like you've learned a lot from your experiences with GE Healthcare and Johnson Controls, and you're somewhat new to Equinix. Can you tell me, how those experiences that you've gotten from your previous life, how they can be applied to Equinix, or do you find them very similar?
I think the process or the formula, let's just talk about the formula to get it right, is the same. Falling down a lot and hurting myself a lot, those were the bumps. Those were a lot of the bumps and bruises that come with expertise or gaining that experience. Equinix gets to reap that benefit, right? There's areas in blind spots that I can direct my team of, no, don't go down that road. That one hurts, and come back to it. Here's a great example. So I have a very high-performing team of great experts, and a good leader always surrounds themselves with experts that are passionate about things that I don't have a lot of. Like I know good design of content. I could not design content, right? I understand how learning systems work, but I could never run code. So having those people on the team, my team is everything to me. We pulled together as a team and said, look, we need to understand our audience. What is it that our audience is? And they all had a variety of answers, right? You ask 10 people, one question, you're going to get 10 answers. So we took that formula that I speak about, and we managed, I don't know, Norm, must have been over 16 to probably high 20s of workshops. And we went out to the field, those guys and gals that I speak of in Equinix, in our data centers. And I listened, and my team listened and said, what is it you do? Who are you? That's the audience. What do you, how do you like to be trained? What do you do for a living? What are the technical aspects that you do? Where does training exist today? How bad is it? How good is it? And we actively listened. And I'm a firm believer there's a difference between listening and hearing, actively listening and really, really writing down what we were hearing about it. Norm, when we walked away from those 20 plus workshops, we had what we consider gold. We had about 200 skills outlined, mapped. We had 4 critical roles outlined and mapped. And we went back to the workshop experts and said, this is what we heard. we heard that a day in the life of the tech starts here, and then they go to here. Is that correct? And we tweaked it a little bit, but they said, yes, finally someone has listened to us. Safety comes first. And, day one, like you cannot go out into the data center floor, similar to what I learned at GE and in Johnson Controls. Don't touch the equipment, right? Until you're safe, until you know what you're doing. That's always going to be number one. So what the guys and gals were actually doing and what my team was listening to was the creation of the curricula. And they didn't even know it because they were just, for once, they were talking and they were engaging. We had people on the call, Norm, from different aspects of the globe that never even met each other. And they were in the same role. And they're like, I didn't know you did what I did. I'm from Korea. I'm from Dallas, Texas. And that kind of passion just grew. And we started building content. We're still building. We're going to be building for a while. But we're building to their spec sheet because we listened. And we're building what they want. So that was taking what I learned of where training programs in the past is, we need this and we need it now. And by the time we would roll it out, we missed the mark because we thought we knew what they wanted. When in theory, we didn't. Does that help? Did I answer you correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you spurred a lot more questions in my mind because that's just totally fascinating, that approach.
Members, tell them all it's going to be 4 hours now.
So talk just briefly about why you chose Skillsoft to partner with you to overcome, this. I mean, it sounds pretty cool that this process that you went through really was almost a risk-based, job-based analysis, which is you approached it in kind of a sneaky way, I think. You didn't call it that, and you didn't get in there and, do it, but you got the same results, and you got it in such a really interesting way. And you got some great ideas. So how does Skillsoft fit into this equation?
Well, think about what Skillsoft does for a living. Occupational health and safety, you're risk-based when you think about your content, right? You mitigate risk and you only create content based on that mitigated risk. I am Lean and Six Sigma born and raised, thank you, GE. When you think about risk and risk mitigation, like I think of the old kind of, 4-block diagram. And think about impact. A shark attack. Man, that's high impact, right? I'm going to lose a leg. I'm going to I could die. Huge, huge impact. I live in the middle of Wisconsin. So the probability of me being attacked by a shark is really low. So I probably don't have to worry about shark attack. So that risk has been mitigated for me, and OH&S mitigates risk every day. Skillsoft does that for me. They've already figured out the risk mitigation on ladder safety, forklift driving, fire extinguisher training, all of the OH&S risk mitigation. So for me, as a learning leader and professional, I don't have to think about risk as much. I have to apply the formula. And I need a partner to do that. Remember what I said about, my team that I'm so proud of. I consider Skillsoft part of my team now because I don't have to wake up and worry about mitigating the risk of the content because I know Skillsoft has that. Now, what can I do with Skillsoft? I can continue to grow my relationship and say, hey, that ladder safety course, we got issues with that. And now we can actively talk and speak and actively listen to each other because there's different ways of teaching and learning. Thank you, global pandemic, that has us rethinking about how we deliver training. It's not the same old e-learning or classroom training anymore. The world is changing and it's fast, super fast. And we need to change with it. And people are absorbing technology and learning at a faster pace than ever before. My leaders want me to go faster. I was like, oh my goodness, how much faster can we go? Skillsoft has that. You have an army behind that. So I don't have to build the army of safety people in an academy for Equinix. I can just pick up the phone and call, Katie or Kim, my great partners at Skillsoft, and say, I think I have a problem with, ladder safety. Some metrics or data came back on that, and let's have a quick powwow on that, and let's come together and figure out what to do with that.
Okay, so what I'm getting is you've got this incredible foundation that you've established by going out to your facilities and talking to your people and really trying to understand what their needs are to help mitigate those risks. And you've chosen a partner who you believe has the pieces, the training pieces that can help you mitigate that risk. So what I want to ask now is, how are you going to put that all together? How are you going to connect the two? What process are you going to use to basically create your roadmap? You gave an example of ladder safety, but talk a little bit more about the big picture about creating that roadmap.
Yeah, so I also planted a little seed called awareness, knowledge, and skills earlier as well, right? When we went out into our workshops, we learned a lot about what is fundamental about our technicians and our engineers. What do they fundamentally have to know? And maybe they just need to know where the ladder is versus climbing it every day. And as we start to build those curricula in the learning world, we wanted a new system to do that, our new platform to do that. We can talk about LMSs. I can talk about probably 8 of them in my career, and I don't want to ever live through another migration of an LMS. But there's learning experience platforms out there now, people. There's Degree, there's EdCast, there's up and coming learning experience platforms where our learners can start to have a better learning experience. So that learning experience content that Skillsoft has can have an integration right with Degree that I don't have to worry about anymore, because it's going to be woven into the pathway that we create for a certain technical role. So maybe it's an entry-level technician role. Remember those workshops? They gave me a day in the life of that tech. Now I can weave that pathway, if you will. Think of stepping stones being put down in a learning experience, platform. And I can take a new tech through some onboarding courses. This is Equinix. This is our products. These are our locations. This is about the company. And then they do that handshake with operations because they're in an operations role. And then we teach them about a day in the life of operations. And then they have to start to become a tech. And that's where Skillsoft comes in. I don't have to think about where all that content is. It's with Skillsoft. You guys house it. You guys do it. I just need that connection, that extension cord into Degree, and I can teach a new tech all of the proper safety courses through identifying through our work that we did in the workshops, pick and choose from the menu items from Skillsoft, put them in front of my tech, but also put some other fundamental courses about what they do for a living for Equinix, and then advance their skills, get into intermediate skills and some advanced skills that we need to do. This learning experience platform, and again, we partnered again with Degree, can track their skills, maybe on a scale of 1 to 8 on ladder safety. I'm a 5. I've been climbing that ladder for quite some time, right? But I still have to prove to certain regulators. I have a quality background. I'm going to always have to prove that I am safe and I've taken all my required compliance training. Maybe I'm in a different country and there's some local laws and regulations, like in European Works Councils or Japan or Korea. There's going to always be that reporting mechanism, but I can lay different pathways in those countries and still have a reporting mechanism. My partnership with Skillsoft is critical because I don't have to think about where that's coming from. It's already in Skillsoft's library.
That's interesting. So let me just go back just a little bit and talk about some tactical issues that I think I heard. One was, you spoke to and involved people from globally from all parts of your organization. And what I'm curious about is, did you find that by and large, there was a lot of similarities in the organizations, regardless of where they were, or did you find that they were similar, but there were some differences, and if there were some differences, how important were those differences? How did they affect your program?
Yeah. So thanks for that, Norm. Before I was hired, so let's just talk about real quick the landscape before I came into Equinix. There was, first of all, Equinix has only been around for 22 years. It's a very young company, still kind of acts like a startup, and it's growing very, very fast. Equinix is a data center company. So if you think about the physical space where the cloud lives or the internet lives, its physical space is in a data center. And there's 244 data centers and growing every day. That's the physical space for the cloud or the internet. So a 22-year-old company, there was not a centralized learning organization for operations. The operations org is over 60% of the company, so huge population. And there was, as the company grew, there was a need to have, obviously, training. And what happened to the company, because there was no centralized org, is people started creating their own training. Skillsoft came in at one time, and the regulation organization at Equinix and the compliance regulators said, we need to be safe. That's mandatory. That connection with Skillsoft was done before, and it was very sporadic training. Some of it was homegrown training. I think there was gaps. I think there was a lot of PowerPoint training, and I think there was best practices. The difference was it was all over the map, and it was probably good in some places, missing in others. Anyway, a scenario. When I came in a year and a half ago, I did a very quick kind of meet and greet, and I did what I call a discovery and learning tour around the globe for 3 months. And what I discovered and learned was it was disconnected. It wasn't common. It wasn't aligned. And yes, there was still some good best practices. So setting up now, coming to it. So I took all those areas that were broken, said we need a system and a process to come together. And the leaders were really looking for a global platform, a global program. We wanted to train all techs and engineers off of one common global curricula, if you will. And what you hear is, well, we're different, we're different, we're different, we're different. And I'm sure everyone has heard that. I heard that at GE and Johnson Controls. Yeah, but Lynn, we're different, we're different. And I got to thinking, are you really? Are you, again, that active listening, are you really different, or are you just really proud of the content and you just don't want to change? And I don't mean that in a mean way. Some of the content that they were protective of really meant that there was local laws and regulations that they had to adhere to. So what we did in the process piece of it is we created a global learning council. Now, what that does for us in the build of setting up a global academy is, again, we invited our friends and neighbors to be part of that global council and have a governance model, and said, we got to govern what kind of goes into our platforms and gets revised in our platforms, but we need you as experts to understand it. So to your point, Norm, is this really mandatory at that level, or can it be brought up to the global level? I'm not an expert in that. I haven't been in Equinix that long. I don't know. I need those same participants that were in that workshop to make those answers for us. They're the ones that are the experts, and they're the ones that can determine, I wonder if it worked in Dallas, can it work in New York? Well, then if it works in New York and Dallas, I bet it can work across all of the U.S. Now, let's look over the pond. Can EMEA do that? Yes, no, except for I don't know, maybe Amsterdam can't for whatever reason. Our model has to be flexible, but our governance tells us that we can document it now. So we still have a variety pack. I would say invite me back in 3 years and maybe we can replay some of these clips and see how far we've come to a common global curricula. I think it's important to know that you could have a global program, but you will always need some regional variances or regional local flexibility. I just think that's the way our world is made up. There's languages, there's local laws, compliance, regulatory differences. It's not one flavor, one size fits all around the globe. And we'd be naive to think it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the experiences I've had working with so many global organizations is that what keeps leaders up at night is when there's not consistency across the entire organization. And is there one or two or more organizations in the system that are not performing at the level that they would like them to perform? And that's what represents the risk to the organization. Yeah. I'm also intrigued by, and I'm going to paraphrase, I'm also intrigued by what you said about, one, the world tour, which sounds pretty exciting to me, going and visiting all these different places just to understand more about your company. But it sounds to me like it's really important that you have access to localized or customized training content to meet the needs of those various organizations. Would you say that's a true statement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
Okay, cool. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about facilitating learning and the flow of work. So it sounds like you have these data centers, and really it seems really important in these days that learning fits in seamlessly with the new ways that people work. As you mentioned, I mean, they're learning at a faster rate. They're learning in different types of environments. So how does this new reality fit into your learning program? How does this, this need, how did you respond to that?
Well, and again, I look back in history, like when I used to teach or run the programs of GE and Johnson Controls, we used to be able to, pull people into a room or create e-learning courses. And that's the world I talk about, being faster and moving faster. A great example, say your neighbor is walking outside and his little girl is riding a bicycle and her chain falls off, right? And now he's sitting there and he's looking at his daughter, and her chain is off her bicycle. So what do you think he's going to do? Does he go in the house, make a couple phone calls, fly across the country in 3 weeks, pack a bag, and go sit in a classroom on bicycle school for 1 week and leaves his family and goes in a hotel? Like, that's how we used to train, right? You would fly across, go sit in a hotel, learn, get a manual, and go to bicycle school, right? Well, that's not what's going to happen. So, second option, does the guy go in, pull out his computer, pull up a bicycle e-learning course that takes him 45 minutes, and he's flipping through and he's dragging and dropping and changing objectives? That's probably not going to happen. What the guy is going to do is probably go to YouTube and in 2 to 3 minutes find a YouTube video on how to change the chain on the bicycle, fix his daughter's bike, and the little girl's happy, and that goes on. And say a month from now, he's walking down the street and a neighbor's bike is in the same situation. He has instant recall because he remembered the video, but the video was audio and visual, and it was short, concise, to the point, and he was able to apply it immediately hands-on. And these are the techs and engineers that I work with, right? So instant recall. So when you think about learning in the know, that was a prime example. He needed to learn in the know. pick on ladder safety. I am a tech, and I'm in the data center for Equinix, and I got to go across the building to the third floor to do my work. I just got a ticket, and I got to go fix a customer's, situation. And a couple things pop up, and one of them is the second floor is under construction. And wouldn't it be great if something came up on safety? Because I have to go through a construction zone that might be working on. And it's quick and it's short and it's a quick reminder. I too am not going to go try to find that one course that OSHA, the Skillsoft sent me. Like, I just want something quick in the know. And because on the third floor, I know I happen to remember that customer and I got to climb a ladder. And wouldn't it be grand if my laptop or my iPad that I'm doing my ticketing in, that I'm going to service and take care of my customer, was smart enough to know that that cabinet is way up high when I service it and I need some ladder safety. That's learning in the know. So some of it can be push training. I would love it to be pull training. I would like our techs to want to pull when they have a little bit of downtime. If they had 20 minutes free, to be able to go into their degreed platform and pull up a couple things that they didn't know before. Right now, our techs go into the systems and platforms they have, and they can't find anything in the 20 minutes, and they get frustrated and they shut down everything, and then they go on to do work. Because our LMS is clunky, they can't find it. It was on page 37 of that one learning module, or they can't find a document. Learning in the know and learning in the flow is going to empower our workforce at a faster rate. And we can keep up with that rate if we give them the right processes and tools. And think about that delivery method. Think about using some of these new technologies. Think about gamification or virtual reality. It's out there and it's moving really, really fast. And in the learning environments, it's moving fast. Skillsoft is already embracing it and thinking about ways to teach safety in a virtual environment where it's perfectly safe and you do no harm, right? Think about those words, do no harm. I want our guys and gals going home to their friends and loved ones safely every night at the end of their day. That should be our number one goal as humans. And again, strong partnership with Skillsoft. It helps me do that, and I don't have to worry about that part in our job of building a strong training program.
So what occurs to me is how things have changed and how you've kind of created that change. We talked about the beginning of the webinar where, back in the day, training was all about compliance, right? So you looked at the law, the regulation, you said, okay, there's a training requirement here initially, you assign that half an hour course, and then you're done. Forget about it, because there's no refresher training requirement. But here, you're kind of changing that paradigm. You're saying that, okay, so you got to meet a requirement. Yeah, you got to meet the law, but really what's most important is changing behavior and supporting your people. And one of the best ways to do that is to give them exactly what they need to know. Training in the know is your vernacular, and I love that. That's just amazing. So it seems to me that this notion of micro-learning is a real game changer for you. Is that right?
Well, it is. And let me throw one other powerful thing out about Equinix. We have a value statement at Equinix that says, I'm safe, I belong, and I matter. I mean, mind-blowing, right? Like, I get to work at a company that believes every day all of the employees are safe, they belong, and they matter. And people laugh at me because I am old and old school. It's not just a poster on a hallway and people walk by it. You hear it in calls, in meetings, in pulse surveys. You can ask anyone on my team, anyone on the migrator teams, people around the world. If that's truly a vision and a value statement at the highest levels of the company, that just breathes all the way down. And yes, it is a game changer because I get to work at this company and I get to create training programs in the biggest organization at this company, operations. Like, that's the heartbeat of this company. And if I can't help all of those employees be safe and go home to family and loved ones every single day, I'm in the wrong business, right? And I've grown up in this business. I grew up with techs and engineers and learning, and I love it. I love it. Is it perfect every day? Heck no. Heck no. There's a lot of broken things, but I tell my team every day, just keep trying, because there's a lot of work to be done, right? There's still what I call scrap learning. Taking out erroneous, irrelevant pieces of learning helps. Coming up with a virtual reality environment where, again, do no harm. It probably sounds morbid, but, do lockout, tagout incorrectly in a virtual world. That could probably look a little bit too violent, but it would set the tone for that person to always do lockout, tagout correctly in the real world environment. And then when they're in the real world environment, they are doing no harm and they're going home safely every night to their loved ones.
So what I really like about this conversation is that, we hear a lot about culture and the importance of culture in an organization, and particularly in an era where the competition for talent in your organization really is very competitive. And we know that a lot of the available workforce out there is really concerned about the culture of an organization. We also hear a lot about this thing called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And it has a lot, it's so new that it has some people, scratching their heads. So how does that apply to me? What you've just said, in my mind, really is that connection, and really is the way that you're implementing, through safety, what ESG is all about and what cultural change is all about. Because, you've essentially, and I can see how sincere you are with this, you said it's important. This is not just training. This is keeping people safe. This is about caring for people. That's culture. That's essentially what ESG is. And the net business result is not only a safe working environment, but it's attracting the best talent for your company. So that's just that's just amazing. I'm going to move to the next topic. That was really good, Lynn. I was really good to hear that. Do you do blended learning in your organization? We haven't touched too much on that, but I was just curious. Is blended learning part of your overall training program?
It is, and I can't stress that enough. So I gave you the bicycle chain, right? The YouTube style learning. Well, I can't swing that pendulum so far that all we do is sit the new hire in the room and give them 87 videos, right? And nor can I send them across the country and make them sit in a hotel room and sit at a conference. So I can't stress blended enough, because our workforce is changing. Our dynamic is changing. We talk about speed. We talk about pace. We talk about a generation in my world of operations. And I'm probably going to stereotype and keep those cards and letters coming. However, the world of techs and engineering is younger. Okay. I'm old school. Let's just say this for a minute, but it's a generation that grew up very tech savvy. I didn't grow up that way, but I know that generation is, and they know it, and they're fast. And guess what? If they don't have an answer at their fingertips, learning in the know, they're bored. And as a learning, I'm creative, I'm a learning leader. I am forever thinking about that solution. And we can't just do all e-learning. E-learning has a place in the blended solution. Videos have a place in the blended solution. I have a person on my team that's testing virtual reality. I'm forever saying, how fast can we do that? And he's probably choking right now. But there's more. That world out there is fast. And we, as consumers, how many are you on this call? My goodness, if you see that spinny thing on your computers, aren't you just like already throwing your eyes back? Because we want it now. We want it in 3 clicks. We're forever. And you don't even know the sound of getting your hookup on a computer that used to sound like nails on a board. We still love that sound because we knew within probably 2 minutes we'd be connected to something. We don't have 2 minutes today. We'd be done with that YouTube video and done. So blended learning is huge. So when I think about those techs and the engineers and learning in the flow of work, doing safety, plus onboarding, plus getting their jobs and those cobblestone paths, going through that degree and using immersive technology, virtual reality, that lockout tagout scenario. How do you strike that balance then without overstimulating someone? You do it in small pieces because you can't just sit and say, I'm going to learn all day and then be 100% overstimulated in 8 hours because you just got thrown 40 to 80, 100 things your way. So it's a nut I have yet to crack, but stay tuned because it's out there somewhere. We just got to keep trying things. And I tell my team a lot, just keep trying. It's not perfect. Just try something. Let's go out and get, here's another one on safety alone. Gamification is going to be huge, right? Driving a car in a simulated environment, you get too close to that curb and that car flips over and that big red X comes up, right? Do your safety training that way. Make it fun. Like, let's have fun again. We're all so serious. Like, there's ways to do it. So blended, but don't put it so much in the blender that you end up with this sloppy, gooey drink. That's blending too much. So I think of it as a pendulum. No, we can't go and sit in that conference room and get a binder full of papers, but we can't do all this other stuff. If anyone out there that is on this podcast that knows that magic formula, boy, I'd love to hear it because I think creating a pull system is about the answer. If as a training organization, I spend a little bit more money and I offer up a variety, I think I can engage all the styles of learning. Because then if I am that YouTube geek and I just want to sit with a bag of popcorn and YouTube video it, so be it. I'm learning. And if I'm a gamer and I just want to game all day, I can do it. And if I'm old school e-learning, I can do it. It's not smart from a training organization or my budget, right? Creating 10 different, delivery methods on every single topic. But there's a mix in there someplace, Norm. I have yet to figure it out. But just like on anything, I tell my team, and I would tell anybody on this podcast or webinar, try something. Try something because you might surprise yourself in what you find.
As I listen to you, and I guess through the entire webcast, it just amazes me how similar we are in our backgrounds and also in our philosophies about training. And I just want to share one story because talking about blended learning really kind of brought this from the depths of my memory. But back in the day, I used to teach hazardous waste operations and emergency response, HAZWOPER. And one of the things we had to do is kind of like a final exercise is put people in level A fully encapsulating suits. We'd send them into a simulated confined space to do a confined space rescue. And one of the things I had to make sure of is we had safety monitors doing the training because the training was dangerous. We could kill somebody because if they ran out of air, if their SCBA malfunctioned, we had to have somebody standing by to get them out of that suit so they wouldn't suffocate. And so, talking about the VR issue and blended learning, Skillsoft, just recently we completed a prototype on VR learning for slips, trips, and falls, and it's our first foray into VR training. And one of the things that excites me about that is putting people in danger without putting them in danger during training, giving them the sense, kind of a hint of danger, because when you do that, you increase the probability of a learning outcome, that they're going to remember it, that they're going to do the right thing. And so this blended approach that you're talking about is hugely important, because at the end of the day, you really want to influence change behavior so that they do work safely and do the right thing, and that they retain it beyond just, yesterday or a week ago, that they keep it with them for as long as you can so they continue to work safe. So everything you said, particularly in the last 15, 20 minutes, just resonates with me so much so that all these memories come flowing back about why you want to do those things, because it really comes down to making your program successful at the end of the day. I want to save some time.
Norm. I will send you my bill then for raking up those memories.
Thanks. So I really just want to spend a moment on this slide, and then I want to move on to the questions, because I see that we have a few questions in the hopper. So why Skillsoft? You had mentioned that there was a couple of reasons why, because we've built this repository of things for you to choose from. So really what I want to say is I want to be your partner, not only because you said some things that resonate well with me, particularly the VR thing. And, to be candid, during the conversations that we've had, you never mentioned VR previously, and you just mentioned this today. So I'll be calling you to get your thoughts on it, because we are developing a prototype, and I want to continue to take this notion forward. So hopefully we can continue to support you. We can make sure that you become successful, and I definitely want to hear more of your ideas and things that will definitely influence our roadmap. I definitely want to hear those things. So I'm going to stop right there. Lynn, is there anything that you want to add before we turn to the audience for questions?
No, just a reminder, one size never fits all, but start small. Be passionate about what you do. It's okay to fall down, learn from it, and just keep moving. Have fun, be serious, and just make sure whatever programs you're offering up out there, you're on this call for a reason. Be good at what you do, love what you do, and make sure the people that you're serving are being safe every day and go home to family or loved ones and friends.
Yeah, well said. Okay, so we've got some time left. I want to turn it back over to our hosts and see if we have any questions from our audience.
Absolutely. We do have quite a few questions from our audience, but I did want to remind those who maybe joined a little late that you can ask a question using the Ask a Question console on your screen at any point for the rest of the webinar, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as we have, as many questions as we can get through today. So I did want to say, about midway through the presentation, you guys had a great conversation all about safety culture and how all of that can go from the top down, and that facilitated a really great conversation in our Q&A box down here. We had quite a few questions come in about how does a person change the safety culture, and even further than that, how is your global training program a reflection of your culture and values?
That's a good one. So we used to, even at Equinix, have regional programs just around safety. So forget all the onboarding and technical and engineering, and the Skillsoft programs we had were regional and within regions. So big regions at Equinix, Ameris, EMEA, APAC, and then within those, like Ameris had, North, East, South, EMEA had countries, etc. And there was a lot of courses, a lot. And my partners at Skillsoft will laugh at this, but I asked them for a decoder ring because there was so many, I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know why we needed so many courses. So we worked out bubbling it up to a global level and understanding what course were mandatory because of the regulation law. And then I was able to understand what courses were because Equinix, it just made good business practice for us to have them because of the industry we were in. That was a heavier lift than some of those workshops because I wanted to make sure our company was, again, safe, but then also safe from any legal requirements, right? I didn't want to jeopardize our company for that. So it's just hard work, and it was taking one topic at a time and looking at, all right, let's look at fire hazards. Let's just take that apart, break it apart, see what we need, see what we can bubble up, see what we can trim down, and we did one at a time. Wasn't the easiest process. I don't know if there was an easier, more lean way of doing that, but we literally had to touch each one to understand the mix of that. I think Skillsoft now has the decoder ring that I call it, that's easier to take a look at and say, this course is here because of these OSHA requirements or these local laws or these language laws. And then it's up to me and the company and working with our EH&S guys and gals to understand when it makes good business practices. I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. And so beyond that, too, how do you feel that you're measuring the success of your multi-modular learning strategies?
Yeah, so I'm an upscale, remember? So if you can't measure it, it's not working and it's not there. I also will put this out there, be careful what you measure, right? Because measuring can, in effect, cause the wrong behavior. Measuring learning is difficult because learning doesn't stand on its own 2 feet. There's always something else going on in learning. And I know Norm and I go back and forth on our dear friend Kirkpatrick, and we've had some good conversations around that. But measuring how effective learning is difficult because it's not just that one event that happens. So I'm more interested in performance measurements and in safety measurements. So we have commit compliance measurements at GE. And at Johnson Controls, we had COPQ, right? The cost of poor quality, which wasn't a safety measurement. It was a quality inspection measurement. Slips and falls and close, near misses was also measured. Near misses we took in Johnson Controls in those 234 manufacturing sites, and I was able to measure near misses and, of course, recordables and track them to the training plans at those manufacturing sites and leaving the names off, but measuring how often the employees were trained and in what languages they were trained. And we actually got down to the fact that some of it was not Skillsoft courses back then. Some of the courses were not properly translated. So it was interesting. And what we found was because they were manufacturing workers, we relied on face-to-face. So we would bring in 20 workers on a Monday morning, and because they didn't have computers, they were working on a production line, we would have a stand-up translator run the e-learning behind them, pause it, and then communicate it. Step forward on the next e-learning course, translate that, and then everyone took a test, and it was grade your own, whatever, it was close enough. That was not good enough. That really was not good enough. And a lot of those near misses came. So we had a safety professional. It was in Mexico, so I can't recall what the actual name was. But after we put a English to Spanish translator in, all of the near misses went down. Cost of poor quality was improved, and the OSHA recordables were improved as well. So be careful what you measure. Measure one thing very well and see if it works, and then apply that logic to other measurements would be my recommendation.
Absolutely. We have time for probably one more question here. So this last one's going to be, how are you able to integrate global onboarding programs with local programs to provide new employees with a seamless journey into local and global teams?
Yeah, so we partner with HR, but we took our own on for operations. So there's two words being used a lot, and we're right in the heart of this, so this hits home, is there's onboarding to the company, meaning here's all your benefits, here's your paycheck, here's your manager, the bathroom's down the hall, that kind of onboarding, right? And then here's all the things you need to know about Equinix and our products and the company and, whatever. Then there's the operations handshake. That's when you come into our academy, and I'm going to teach you all about our operations. And the seamless approach is, again, this very smart team of mine that I talk about is creating a landing page so that all of that information is seamless. Now, behind the scenes is a lot of cords, if you will. Think about all the cords. But to our users, we are taking the learner experience to the next level. We want one seamless learning experience globally, and we're going to control that. And I know control is kind of a funny word, but if we don't control it, we will not have a seamless experience across the globe. There's always then a handoff then that will say, okay, China, Germany, Dallas, Canada, whatever, they're yours. And that's when they get really immersed into their data center, as it should be, right? Because now they're ready to learn some of those things. Like Norm said, hopefully they'll be immersed in some safety things before they go out, but that's when we want to turn them over to their data center. Great questions. Great questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we cannot thank you enough for all of your answers today. This has been a really great webinar. We'd love to thank Skillsoft for sponsoring this webinar, but also a special thank you to all of you who listened in and participated with us today. Remember that in the next day or two, we will be emailing you a link to the archived version of this webinar so that you can do it again, or you can view it again, or share it with a colleague. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. This ends today's information session.